So we're gonna play a game, and the game is called Name That Doctor. Okay, Name That Doctor. So I know we've got some really smart people that attend Harvest, and you're gonna know a lot of these answers. Okay, so we're just gonna play this game. So the first one, I'm gonna say it like this: if you need a doctor to help you with, and I'll name an area of your health, then you would be looking for, and then you're going to just yell out what you think it is, and then we've got a slide that'll prove if you got it right or not. So it's really easy. Are you going to participate with me? All right, it's not going to be any fun if you just look at me, okay? So if you were looking for a doctor to help you with an issue with your physical heart, I'm not talking spiritually, we're talking like, I need a doctor. It would be a what? A heart doctor, Pastor Tyler says, which is called a cardiologist. Okay, I did hear that answer from some of you. If you needed a doctor to go look like an issue with your skin, good. A skin doctor again? No, a dermatologist. I've had to visit this one. A doctor to help you with an issue with your feet. A podiatrist. Yes. Jace chimed in with Tyler. A foot doctor. Yes. Such smart people. Now this one, I don't know if you're going to get this one or not. If you are a guy and you need a doctor, you need a gynecologist, right? Boom. I didn't know if I could do that one, but all right, we did it. If you're looking for a doctor, I just confused so many people. To focus on your mental health, you would be looking for a psychiatrist, all right? A brain doctor, Tyler says, right? Now here's the thing. Isn't it interesting that none of the other doctors, cardiologists, podiatrists, we only named a couple of them, they don't carry the same stigma as when you find out someone's seeing a therapist, a counselor, a psychiatrist. Isn't that interesting? Like someone gets out of heart surgery, right? And no one goes, oh my gosh, you went to a cardiologist? Right? Like, nobody's saying that, right? I had some issues with my feet last year. I mentioned it to a few people. I said I went to a podiatrist. No one looked down their nose at me like, oh my gosh, you saw a podiatrist. How dare you, little faith man, right? Like that wasn't happening. But there's this stigma around mental health. And thankfully, I really think we're making some progress, at least here, in our sphere. We're saying, no, that stigma is just ridiculous. We're getting rid of that. Because look, when you need help in a particular area of your life, you go get help for that particular area of your life. And there are some amazing Christian, spirit-filled therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. There's some amazing people out there who are ready to help us in this area. Now, I want to go to one of my favorite verses. It's really a life verse for me. John chapter 10, verse 10 says this: the thief, this is the devil, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus says this: but I have come that you may have life and have that life to the full. Does anyone want that kind of life, right? That's the kind of life I dream about for you and for my family. That's the life, is this life to the full. But I just want to make you aware, because the first part of this verse warns us, Satan has an agenda. You know that, right? Like, he's not just like floating through life like, oh, let's see what happens. He wakes up every day with a plan to steal from you, to kill your family, to destroy your marriage, to destroy your finances, to destroy your health. He is out for you every single day. And it's not just like this little game. Like, he plays for keeps. But Jesus came so we could have life to the full. That's the life I'm dreaming for. Now, this series really began to stir in my heart about 5 years ago. I don't know that I knew it at the time, but I'm just going to tell you the progression so you see how we got to where we are today. About 5 years ago, there were a number of pastors that had a pretty big stage presence, pretty well known across the country. I didn't know any of them on a personal level, but I knew of them. I'd listened to their podcast or read their books or seen them at a conference. And about 5 years ago, there was this string of well-known pastors who, one after the other, over a couple of years, committed suicide. And the reason it grabbed my attention is because I could associate. I was like, I know the pressure that guy felt. I understand what his Monday morning felt like. I understood, the critique that he received. I could kind of, it still didn't make sense. But I was like, man, I always thought pastors are impenetrable in this area. Why are pastors all of a sudden, committing suicide? And then it moved a little closer to home this last year during COVID, because all of a sudden mental health it rose to the surface at unprecedented levels. My best friend pastors in Tucumcari, New Mexico, halfway between here and Amarillo. It's a town of about 4,000 people. And during the height of COVID in 2020, he and I would be on the phone multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. And I remember because he started calling me and saying, man, I'm counseling someone else today that's suicidal. I'm counseling someone else today that's suicidal. And there was a period of about 5 weeks in a row where he was counseling 3 people a week in a town of 4,000 that were suicidal. In 2020, in this little town of 4,000 people, they had 11 suicides in 2020. And I'm just telling you, what happened for me is this subject of mental health, and there's a lot under that umbrella. It moved closer, right, in my heart. It was like, okay, it's not just pastors in a few states away. Now it's 2.5 hours from where I live, and my best friend is having to counsel all of these people, and it just moved closer. And then it moved even closer just a few weeks ago here in our own church family, and the timing was, I was like, okay, these are things that we absolutely have to talk about. Again, I keep saying this, but I think that as we're talking about this subject of mental health, I want you to know very clearly that I believe that the church can bring solutions to help in this area. Do you believe that? In fact, I believe the church should be at the forefront of solving this problem, at the forefront of breaking that stigma, of creating a new culture where it's okay to not be okay, but it's just not okay to stay that way, right? It's like we all have issues. We all have things we're working through. But as we figure out what those are, let's get the necessary help. So as we're talking about mental health, we've been using this text out of 1 Kings, mainly chapters 18 and 19. And we're looking at the life of one of the greatest prophets in the Bible. It's a guy by the name of Elijah. And the last couple of weeks, I'll just give you a recap because we've already covered this. But what we see here is that Elijah had these 2 amazing God moments. Phenomenal, powerful, amazing things. First, he defeats the 450 prophets of Baal. These are false prophets. They challenged Elijah to a contest, and Elijah said, y'all build your altars and call out to your God, and if he responds with fire, then you win. Your God's real. And then I'll build my altar, and I'll do the same thing. You know the story. They built the altar. They danced around. They yelled. They did all the things. They held their tongue the right way, and they stood in, they did all this stuff, and nothing happened. And I love this because I hadn't really noticed it until Peter kind of unpacked it last week, because then Elijah goes to his altar. And you remember this? It hasn't rained in 3 years. And so what does Elijah do? Elijah says, hey, go get me some water. And I hadn't thought about how big of a detail that was, because it hasn't rained in 3 years. You're rationing water. It's liquid gold. But he ups the ante. He says, douse it. Douse the sacrifice, the altar, dig a pit around it, fill it up. In other words, he's like, I want to make this as fireproof as possible, right? And he calls out to God, and God answers with fire. Can you imagine that moment? Like, wouldn't that have been a cool moment to have, a hidden camera and just to see, like, what did that look like, right? How did that happen? How did the prophets, respond in that moment? And it just had to have been. I mean, listen, there's preachers and prophets and evangelists. There's a little bit of pride in all of us that when God shows up like that, we're like, whoo-hoo, yeah, what's up, right? And I think Elijah, I don't know, we don't get a lot of detail, but I think he was reveling in that moment, right? Because then he whips out a sword, he starts killing all the prophets, like, what's up now, what's up now, what's up? His Old Testament's kind of crazy, right? And then he's like, oh, yeah, this drought, okay, God, can you end the drought? Sure, Elijah, 3 years, boom, rain. Again, right? In that moment, Elijah's got to kind of feel like the man, right? Like, what's up? Look at that. I prayed for rain. It just happened. I just defeated the prophet. Look at this. This is amazing. Are you with me in this story? And it's right after that. It's these two incredible experiences that then we turn the page and we find Elijah depressed and ready to take his own life. And what triggered that is Jezebel, the queen, had sent out a threat and said, Elijah, I'm going to kill you, just like you killed the prophets. I'm going to kill you. And all of a sudden, he's running and he's hiding, and he finds himself in this cave. That's why we're titling this Out of the Cave. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked about how do we end up in the cave. I think it's important to look at that. What are the things that often cause us to end up in that cave of depression? But today and next week, I'm really excited because I really would rather talk to you about how to get out of the cave. That's much more fun, right? How to get out of the cave. 1 Kings chapter 19 says this. He lay down, this is Elijah, he lay down, he slept under the broom tree, but he was sleeping. As he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him something. I'm going to pause. I'm not going to tell you what the angel said yet. Okay, notice this. Elijah is exhausted. How exhausted do you have to be to fall asleep, laying on the ground under a tree, right? He's not in a comfy bed, right? He doesn't have his perfect sleep number. He doesn't have his noisemaker on, my white noisemaker I like to sleep with. He was just laying under a tree. I actually had this experience about 2 weeks back. I had a Friday that I was able to schedule to get out of town, and I asked Lisa, I'm like, is that all right if I go fishing? And she goes, well, who are you going with? I said, nobody. That's the point. I want to be by myself. And I got out, I left super early, I got out in the mountains, and I was fishing, and it started to get hot, and then I just was tired, and I never do this, y'all. I was just like, you know what? I should just go to sleep. And I just laid down and just went to sleep. I pulled an Elijah. Now, I wasn't depressed, I didn't do any of that part, but I just slept, like just bam, I was gone for like an hour. This is Elijah. He's sleeping under the broom tree, but he's all messed up in his head. He's depressed, and this angel wakes him up. And I haven't read it to you. You've probably read the story, but just put yourself in these shoes for a minute. What did the angel say in your mind if an angel's waking up a guy who's just done all this great victories for the Lord, now he's depressed? What did the angel say? Like, I wrote down some things. Like, sometimes I think the angel might go, Elijah, how dare you? What's wrong with you, Elijah? Come on. You're the man of God. You just defeated the prophet. Come on. Get with it, right? I think you should do better than this. Come on, man of God. Or maybe you just kind of like nudging him with his foot and said, come on, be more spiritual, Elijah. What's wrong with you? Come on. Here's a devotional, right? I don't know. Or you may not think that. Or maybe the angel came kind of skipping in, and he's like, Elijah, have happy thoughts, Elijah. Come on, Elijah. Smile. Turn that frown upside down, Elijah. Don't you hate people that do that to you when you're depressed? I just want to kick them. Right? It's not, the angel didn't do any of that, right? Maybe the angel didn't skip in. Maybe he floated in. He said, Elijah, I have special revelation from the throne of God that will change your mood. Right? No, he didn't say any of this. Let's read what he said. He said, This is Revelation. Get up and eat. Come on, somebody. Get up and eat. I don't know if you're getting it. This is some really good advice. This is angelic, from the throne of God advice. Get up and eat. And in my version, there's a comma and it says barbecue. All right? I don't know what version you read, but you might need a new one after today. Get up and eat some barbecue. So he looked around, it says, and there beside his head was bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and he drank, and then watch this, and he lay down again. He lay down. It's like, oh, right? Which, by the way, when I read this passage, I think I've shared this before, but I picture Texas Roadhouse. You know when you go to Texas Roadhouse, the first thing, they literally are carrying the hot bread with you to the table, but it's not even the hot bread that's so special. What is it? It's the honey butter, right? I don't even need the bread. Just eat that butter, man. The minute they bring it to the table, I'm like, we're going to need some more of that. I'm just telling you right now, okay? Elijah, he's got the bread and some water. He eats it. He lays back down. And then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him. So he's back asleep. And he said, get up, eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he ate and he drank. And the food gave him, watch this, the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 more days. The food. This is really practical, right? It's not a big spiritual revelation. It's not a church service. It's not a worship song. Those are all good things. We'll get to it. The food gave him the strength to travel. So he went 40 days and nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. There, he came to the cave where he spent the night. I just find it so interesting that the angel attended to Elijah's physical needs first before his spiritual needs. I think we can learn from this because sometimes I think we get this reversed, especially in Christian circles. So how do we get out of the cave? I want to talk to you about two things today, and then I've got three more next week. Number one is this. Number one, you got to take care of yourself physically. This is where we're going to start because this is where the angel started. If you're going to get out of the cave, you got to take care of yourself physically. We have a friend, a good friend of ours. Her name's Annika, and a couple years ago, she had a family member who was having some physical problems. They discovered it was kidney, and so she was going to donate a kidney, and it was really interesting walking through with our family there, with our friend, this process of how they would test Annika, who had the healthy kidney, and her family member who had the unhealthy kidney, and all the things that were going on, and all the pieces had to be just right. Everything had to be just right. And they had to get to the hospital real early and stay there a few days and all these tests. And here's what I learned in that is that they knew Annika's kidney was healthy. What they wanted to find out was if the recipient, watch this, was healthy enough to receive a healthy kidney. See, if the recipient was not healthy enough to receive the healthy kidney, then the sick body would reject the healthy kidney, and the whole thing would have just been a waste. And it just made me think about it. Like, I wonder how many times God has something amazing for us, but we're too sick to receive it. Right? I'll just tell you this. I've been too unhealthy that I've been at a conference that had a lot of great spiritual knowledge that could have helped me, but I wasn't healthy enough to be able to receive that, so as a result, it didn't even help me. Is that making sense? This is why we got to start here with this idea of taking care of ourselves physically. There's solutions all around you. But unless you're physically recovered, you're physically healthy, you can't receive. So what the angel does is he takes Elijah on this spiritual journey, and he gets really, really practical. And that's what I want to do with you for a few moments this morning. The angel's prescription was this: take a nap, get something to eat, take another nap, get some more food, right? That was the initial prescription. Often when I'm counseling someone who's in a crisis, and looking across this room, I've said this to some of you over the last years. In fact, I'll be talking to someone in a crisis, and this will be the initial advice. I'll say, hey, don't make any big decisions right now. Prioritize your health. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Eat some good food. Spend time with your spouse. Gather with your friends. Come back to church. Like, you hearing all of this? They're like really simple, practical things because I just know that that's where it starts. Now, I'll tell you kind of a funny confession that goes with this. I knew this week I was going to be talking about getting the sleep that you need. Well, I got sick early in the week, and I was just not being able to kick it. It was these bad allergies, and I wasn't kicking it. So I got on some medicine. I got on a steroid that man, I'm telling you, like 24 hours, I was like, woohoo, I'm ready to go. The side effect of the steroid, though, you might know this, I can't sleep. I was literally up from 1:30 to 4:30 this morning. And I just was, at one point, I went through all the emotions, but at one point I just had to laugh, right? And go, I'm teaching the church to sleep well at night, and I can't sleep, right? It's kind of ironic. You got to get enough sleep. Y'all know how much it messes you up to not get enough sleep, right? And here's what's happened. When we get depressed, we do one of two things. We either oversleep or we undersleep, right? I'm just saying this. Take care of yourself. Get a right amount of sleep. Here's a really practical suggestion. I know some of you have a hard time falling asleep. Lisa and the girls, sometimes they'll use this app. It's called the Dwell app. The Dwell app. And it's something you can just turn on, listen. It's kind of this guided meditation. And they'll turn it on, just lay there and let the Word of God kind of wash over them and then walks them through. Next thing I know, I come in and they're just snoozing. They're just out, right? There's all kinds of, I'm not a sleep doctor. What kind of doctor would that be? A sleepologist? I don't know. There's a name for that. A sleep doctor. Here's what I'm saying. Take care of yourself. Get the right amount of sleep. Right? Depression often tells you to stay in bed. But listen to this. God designed you, chemically, He put you together so that when you get up and you move, right, and you exercise and you go for a walk, and watch this, when you get out in the sun, He created your body to take vitamin D in from the sun. I'm just telling you, one of the things that happened in 2020 is people were all cooped up and locked in their houses. And part of it, we weren't getting enough sun, right? I have a friend that's a missionary in Alaska, and in the wintertime when it's dark for 20 hours a day, he said, my number one challenge in the winter is keeping people not be depressed because it's like they physically can't get enough sun, and the body, it's like it turns on you. Here's what I'm telling you. When you're depressed, you're going to have to force yourself in some ways to do the healthy things that you know are going to help you physically. You get up and you move, and you release the endorphins and the chemicals. You get out in the sun. By the way, I just tell you this. Friday, I told you I was here. I was praying. I was crying more than I was praying. I got done, and Jace left, and I got my stuff done. And sometimes I'll just do this because I think it's just healthy because I don't want to get up and tell you to do something that I'm not willing to do. So I closed my notebook. I went in. I put my stuff on my desk, and I got my hat, my sunglasses, and I just took off I went for a 2-mile walk. Went out to Mariposa and went around and just went for a walk and just spent some time to the Lord. And I got back, and I'll just tell, I was like, man, that was some good preaching. That guy knew what he was talking about. That worked. It just felt good. It was like, wow. It's amazing how when you start taking care of the physical things, how quickly they just begin to add up. When you're depressed, one of the feelings you have is that you have no control over your circumstances. Let me just say to you today, in this area, you have more control than you feel like you have. And sometimes you got to take control. You got to say, I'm going to get the sleep I need. I'm going to pay attention to my diet. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to pay attention to my schedule, right? That was a piece of what we talked about a couple weeks ago. Listen, you need margin in your life. The lack of margin will drive you batty. It'll drive you crazy. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6, better one handful of tranquility than 2 handfuls of toil and chasing after the wind. Americans love to live this 2-handful life. We just grab everything and as much as we can, and we're busy and it's hectic and it's crazy, and we wonder why we're so anxious and worried and fearful and depressed. Maybe we go after life with one handful and save one for the peace of God. Here's what I've learned. If I don't prioritize my own life, someone else will prioritize it for me. Have you realized that? There's a lot of people who think they know what's best for your life. Have you noticed this? I'll give you some examples. Your boss thinks they know what's best for your life. Some of you work for a boss that they expect you to work overtime all the time. Anyone? You don't have to raise your hand. They might be watching. Listen, overtime's not bad, but overtime all the time is bad. You need margin. And most of you don't have a boss who's going to come to you and go, I think you're working too much. You should slow down, right? You might have to be the one that draws the boundary and says, you know what, I've done this for 2 weeks, but this week I got to get off early on Thursday because I got to take my kid to soccer, right? You're going to have to be the one that creates the margin in your life. How about this? Every store that you go to, every store has an agenda for your budget. They think you should buy everything they have all the time. Guess what? You can't afford everything they have all of the time. You're going to have to decide when can I afford this? I'm the one that sets the boundaries. They don't force me to swipe the card, right? They don't reach into my pocket and take the cash out. They're just giving me options, and it's up to me. I've got to control the things that I can control. Moses wrote in Psalm chapter 90, verse 12, he said, teach us to number our days and recognize how few they are. Help us to spend them as we should. What a great prayer, huh? What if every day we just said, oh man, God, I don't know how many days I have left, but help me today to spend this in the way I should and the rest of this week and the rest of this month. Lord, where do you want me? How do you want me to do it? What do you want me to do? God, I want to live what you've put in front of me. There's a concept in the Bible that we tend not to do very well with when it comes to taking care of ourselves physically, and it's the concept of the Sabbath. Sabbath. Now, there's a lot of misinformation about the Sabbath. A lot of people believe the Sabbath is just, go to church on Sunday. It's much bigger than that. I want to help you. It's much, much bigger than that. It's actually such a big deal that it's one of the 10 commandments, right? 10 commandments. You got these big commandments, like don't murder and don't commit adultery and, don't use God's name in vain and don't steal. And then it says this, Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. Here's how it lays it out. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Many times we get this wrong. It's not just a day to go to church. It's literally a day of rest. It's work 6 days, off 1 day. But the mantra in America is more is better. The idea is if I can make X amount of money in 6 days, then I can make X amount more in 7 days. Right? If I can get X amount done in 6, I can get X amount more in 7. And so we ignore this command to Sabbath and we just work more. 2 handfuls, right? More. The concept of the tithe in the Bible is that God can do more with 90% than you can with 100. The concept of Sabbath is that God can do more with 6 days than you can with 7. I would challenge you to try these concepts. I promise you, He can do more with that than you can on your own. But the hard part is Sabbath requires trust. Sabbath requires, I don't know if you do this or not, I have a to-do list on my phone. It's not fancy. I've tried apps. None of them work for me. So I just literally use notes. And this is my to-do list. I'm just scrolling. So you can, did y'all see? That's my to-do list. It's nuts. And you know what Sabbath does? Sabbath says, to-do list will not get to-do'd today. I do on the to-do, right? Listen, there are just days when it's just like, it's not going to get done. It's not going to help me to cross 3 things off because 7 more things are going to jump back on it, right? I'm telling you, so the Sabbath just says, okay, God, today I'm going to rest. I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to eat some good food. I'm going to do something that I love. I'm going to get re-energized. I'm going to get rested. And then I believe you're going to help me to get all the things done in the next 6 days that I need to get done. Sabbath's hard. I'm not going to, there we go. I was going to meddle. Do you want me to meddle? Can I meddle just a minute? Here's, I think this is an enemy of the Sabbath to the modern church. It's the area of our kids and their programs and the things that they're a part of. When I was a kid, there was no league in town that would dare schedule a tournament on a Sunday, because Sundays were still kind of like a little bit holy, right? My dad was a pastor, and he also coached my little league team, and that was just like, we knew we could do it because we weren't playing on Sundays. That was part of it. And the whole culture has shifted today, and you and your family are made to feel less than if your kid's not on the right team playing the league sport, right? The club sport that travels to 14 states and costs you a mortgage payment every month, right? And listen, I love all of that, but you have to manage for your family, because that league is not, all they want is your time and your money, right? So these are just places. I'm trying to get as practical as you can, because running all over the country playing whatever sport you're playing and doing it all, it's not evil, but it could be keeping you from life to the full, right? You remember that promise? Life to the full. So I'm just trying to throw out some things so that you can look at them and try to figure out, how do I do this? We see the Sabbath in the very opening of Scripture, Genesis chapter 2, 6 days, it says God worked, and then it says this, the heavens and earth were completed. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he'd been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested. This is God, y'all. God rested on the seventh day. Let me just tell you, God is all-powerful. God did not need rest. God rested to set an example for you and I to follow. And then he blessed the seventh day, and he made it holy. And he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. It was in this moment that God establishes a regular, rhythmic time of rest for you and I to follow. Sabbath is where we regularly, intentionally engage in God's rule and reign over our lives. So you're going to have to find a rhythm for your family. For my family, Sundays are all-out work day, right? Sunday's not my Sabbath, okay? Just so you know. I do get to come to church. It is a holy day. I get to see some of my favorite people on the planet. But Sunday's not a Sabbath for me. So we, in our family, have created different rhythms so that we can get our own Sabbath. I don't know if you experienced the same thing as I did this week, but all of the news stories were just so overwhelming, and there was so much going on in the world. And I was talking to Lisa about it one day, and she showed me a teaching by a guy that we like. His name's Carlos Whitaker, and he said something in this teaching that really resonated with me. I wanted to share it with you. He said this. He said, to help others, we first have to be healthy ourselves. You know, I think all of a sudden this week, people are like, what do we do for Afghanistan? Or what do we do over here? Or, earthquake in Haiti. What do we do there? What do we do here? Listen, you and I have to be healthy enough to be able to help someone else. And then Carlos went on to talk about how this idea of the data or the content that we consume on a regular basis and how it affects our soul. He made some interesting points. This is kind of crazy to think about. Think about all of the data that was created in the world from the dawn of time until 2003. Okay? All the news stories, all the statistics, all the pictures, all of that. Okay? Now think about it. That's a lot of data. Dawn of time to 2003. And now the experts say that we create that same amount of data every 2 days. That's how much is being pushed out, right? In all forms. I mean, good Lord, it's everywhere. Like you almost can't escape the data right now. And most of us, this is one of the problems, most of us have that data carrying around in our hands or our pockets or our purses or, nestled beside our beds when we go to sleep, right? And so you wake up and you swipe and you instantly begin to take in data, news stories, and Facebook feeds, and Instagram posts, and all this. You just start taking in the data. In fact, the experts say in the first 15 minutes of your day, you will consume as much content as your grandparents did in an entire month. Isn't that crazy to think about? And I wanted to talk about this because we're trying to figure out, this whole series is a lot about soul care. How do I take care of my soul? How do I keep my heart in the right place? How do I stay healthy? And so Carlos went on to talk about all this data, and he started talking about what to do. How do, because, I don't know, do you ever feel helpless? Like, well, what am I supposed to do? I mean, my phone dings. I got to read the story, right? The video popped up, or someone emailed it, or someone texted. It feels like it's like forcing its way into your life. Am I right? So let me just say this, talking about data and how this plays into our physical health. You have to be responsible for your own soul before helping others. Listen, Facebook they're not looking out for your soul. Instagram's not looking out for your soul. CNN, the NBC, CBS, pick any letter combination, right? They're not thinking about your soul. They're inundating you with data. Listen, the agenda, actually, they are trying to shape your heart. So we have to be in control of this. So let me give you some really practical things, all right? I keep saying that. This is like practical day, right? Practical day at Harvest. How many think it'd be fun if I gave away something today? You think that'd be fun? That could help you in this area? Now, I'm just warning you, I've covered it over here because I didn't want you to see it, because what is about to happen is going to blow your mind, okay? Are you ready for your mind to be blown? It is a piece of technology, and you can tell that because it's got a cord down here. It's plugged in, so you can tell that it's a piece of technology. And today, listen, Pastor Tyler talked about what a generous church we are. Today, I'm about to blow you away with generosity because I'm going to give one person at Harvest the item that is under this tablecloth. Are y'all ready for this? This will be life-changing. There are people in this room who won't even know what this is when I show it to you. Are y'all ready for this? This is the life-changing piece of technology that some of you need to rush to Walmart today to purchase. Are you ready? Drum roll. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. It's an alarm clock. This alarm clock cost $9.97 at Walmart. This alarm clock cannot charge your iPhone. I know you're offended, right? It doesn't charge Androids. It doesn't play CDs. It doesn't holographically put the time on the ceiling. It doesn't dance. It doesn't dispense pixie dust. It doesn't tell you news stories. It doesn't update you on Facebook. It literally does one thing. It tells you the time, and it wakes you up at the time you ask it to. How crazy is this? My daughter is she's so glad she came to church today. She's blown away right now, right? You have one of these. I should have just called you. No, I don't want yours. Listen, I'm kind of having fun with this. But this is for real. This is an unhealthy thing that we've just kind of coasted into this. How many of you, just be honest with me, how many of you charge your phone beside your bed? How many of you? There's no shame, okay? There's no shame. But you might feel better for admitting this. I do too, okay? I'm trying to figure this out right now. That's why I'm talking it out right now, real life with you. Here's what happens. They've tricked us into believing this is our alarm clock. But the instant it becomes your alarm clock, it becomes your everything else, right? Very few can get it off the nightstand and turn the alarm clock off and put it back down. Most of us instantly swipe to something. And I know some of you are really spiritual and you're like, I swipe to the Bible app, the very first thing, and that's the first thing that I do, Pastor. Okay. Whatever. Most of us swipe to something else. And what happens is your feet haven't even hit the floor, and your heart is already being shifted for the day. It's so fast and it's so subtle. And so I would encourage you. I'm serious. Like, just try it, okay? What if we tried charging our phones in another room so you had to make effort to go and get it, right? And you're like, well, I don't want to miss what happens. You'll be okay, I promise. And what if you bought an alarm clock to wake you up, right? I mean, it's just a suggestion. Some of you need this, some of you don't. You can take what you don't have to, okay? Who wants this fantastic? Oh, come here, Olivia. I think you're the right one. I didn't know how I was going to do this, but you just need that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Harvest loves you. Because of your generosity, we give away alarm clocks at Harvest. Here's another one, okay? This will blow some of your minds. Did you know there are still newspapers that you can subscribe to and they're delivered to your house? Did you know that? Yeah? You could do that. It's just something you could do. I'll tell you what I've been doing lately is I have made a decision to limit the amount of news that I read to 10 minutes a day, once a day. So once a day in the morning, I choose the news feed, right? I don't let the news feed choose me. And I go to the news feed and I get 10 minutes to see what's happening in the world. And after that, I don't find out until the next day unless someone tells me something, right? It's just, I'm not against news. Are y'all getting this? I'm trying to get really practical. How do you manage the things that are coming into your heart? So get back to Elijah, 1 Kings chapter 19, 9 through 12. Then he went into the cave, he spent the night, and the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? By the way, people ask how to hear from God all the time. They ask pastors this, so pay attention. You'll see some things here. Verse 10, he replied, I've been very zealous for the Lord, God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. It's interesting how human nature, we love to shift the blame. We're always looking for someone else. Elijah does not own his own stuff here. He immediately starts blaming, well, the Israelites did this, and they're after me, and the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord. Underline that, in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Y'all, the presence of God changes everything. You know that, right? The presence of God changes. And here, so the angel took care of him physically, and now the Spirit of God's saying, get ready, because now I want to do something in you spiritually. I personally believe the best prescription for anything you are facing is to get in the presence of God. Anything. Any crisis, any physical thing, financial thing, job thing, marriage thing, parenting thing, anything is to get in the presence of God. Now look at Elijah's experience. A great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart, shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. Here's the next step. How do we get out of the cave? You take care of yourself physically, and then number 2, you take care of yourself spiritually. Just a quick observation from Elijah's experience. We often are looking for God in the dynamic, but so often He's in the intimate. We're looking for Him in the big and the loud, in the bright, in the powerful, in the hazy, right? That's a big church, in the haze. Like that's where God is. The haze comes in, the Spirit of God comes in, right? How many of you grew up going to church camp? You know any church camp people? Isn't church camp fun? And it's so much fun. I love, squad is fun, and church camp's fun, and retreats are fun, and I love that stuff. You need to know, it's my personality. Yeah, bring on. Camp is on. I was called into the ministry at camp, and I have all these great experiences. I was filled with the Holy Spirit at camp. Great things happen there. All these things are good. I love concerts and retreats and getaways. All of that is good, but if I'm honest with you, the majority of my experiences where God really touched my heart in a meaningful way weren't at the big, loud, amazing things. They were in the quiet with just me and God. in a bedroom, in my car, beside a river, on a running trail, in the sanctuary. I'm just telling you, we look for God so much in the dynamic, but God is He's in the intimate. He's in those places where our hearts can get quiet enough, still enough to hear that gentle whisper. Y'all know this verse, I'm sure. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Just think about it for a minute. When was the last time that you were still enough to hear the voice of God in your heart? When was the last time that you just paused, you just got quiet? And that looks different for all of us, I get it. But you just got quiet and you said, all right. And all of a sudden you heard the whisper of the God. There's this cool verse in John chapter 4, verse 23. It says this, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth." And I love this second part of the verse. It says, "They are the kind of worshipers that the Father seeks." The pastor who wrote the book, Out of the Cave, he teaches this, and I just love it so much. He teaches out of this verse. He says, if you can't find God, worship Him and He will find you. It's this idea that John says there's a time when the worshipers, they begin to worship in spirit and in truth, and that's the kind of worshiper the Father seeks. Have you ever been so overwhelmed that I love this cave illustration. It's like you just felt like you were kind of wandering through a dark cave, like trying to feel your way, find your way to the exit. Have you felt that way? Like, I don't know how to get out of here. This idea in John makes so much sense to my heart, because it's like, in that moment, your best option is to begin to worship and let God just find you. Instead of us wandering around in the dark, confusing, dismal cave of despair going, God, where are you? I don't know what to do. What if we just paused and we just began to worship? And the Spirit of God actually found us. Isn't that refreshing? Like, it takes the pressure off. Like, I don't have to do a whole bunch. I have to earn a whole bunch. I just stop and I just worship and I let God find me. Psalm chapter 73. Why don't you stand with me this morning? Psalm chapter 73 says this. It says, when I tried to understand all this, I think this was where I was at this week. When I tried to understand Afghanistan and Haiti and school shootings and police shootings and governor mandates, when I tried to just understand this, it just troubled me deeply. Anyone relate to that feeling this week or any other time in your life? Till I entered the sanctuary of God. Isn't that cool? Until I entered the sanctuary of God. So all I want to do in these final moments is give your heart a place to just find some rest. Just find some peace. After this, you can go to Texas Roadhouse and eat all the honey butter you want. Just don't tell your doctor, your pastor said to do that. After that, I hope you go take a nap. I hope you get up and eat some more. Go back to sleep tonight. Go exercise in the morning. Call a great friend and have a great conversation. Enjoy a coffee that you like. Don't take a nap at work. Following me? But this moment is for us to allow our spirit to connect with the Spirit of God. I've been praying that these final few minutes would just be amazingly refreshing to your soul. It's that passage is like deer pants for water, so my soul longs for you. I think some of you came in today, I don't know how you would have described you, but there's this longing in your soul, like, man, I got to connect with God. I got to feel His presence. I got to hear His voice. And so all we're going to do is worship team's going to lead us. We're going to spend just a few minutes and we're just going to worship. And I'm just banking on this promise that John talked about, that as we worship, that the Spirit of God is going to find you right now in the place that you are, in the things that you're facing, in the questions you're asking, in the turmoil of your heart, in the pain of your life. And he's gonna bring help. He's gonna bring hope. He's gonna sustain you. He's gonna strengthen you. He's gonna bring confidence. He's gonna infuse you with joy. He's gonna bring peace into your heart. Is anyone receiving that this morning? We haven't even started worship. Some of you have. I can see you're like, come on, let me do it. Are y'all ready? All right, let's worship. Worship team, I'm just gonna stay close because I'm probably gonna pray some stuff, but go ahead, let's worship.